Hello, my beautiful darlings. I am Madame Raven. Why am I here? Well, of course, to do a collab with Musey. Musey and I met a few years ago we have done collabs before. We did them for a all-female collab I did, and we've done some twice a year with Dr. Creepen on his channel to give smaller narrators a wonderful chance to get some attention. Musey is a lovely lady who to me sounds like Jennifer Tilly. I don't know why. Others don't necessarily agree, but she is so fun and bubbly. Maybe that plays into it. Anyway, we are at some point in time doing the Cask of Amontillado female version on my channel, but this is a collab on hers. I hope you enjoy the stories of all of these marvelous narrators. Give them a listen and check out my channel if you haven't. And give us a like and a subscribe.
Grande, non-fat, no foam, extra hot latte for Jessica.
The barista called. No, not just any barista. It was Damien. Jessica committed his sweet name to memory weeks ago after glimpsing his name tag. She sauntered up to the counter, setting a smoldering look to ensnare him as he scanned the crowd for her. Their eyes locked. Her hand touched his for the briefest moment as she reached for her cup.
Have a nice day,
he said with a smirk. Jessica retreated to a table with her prize. One by one, she peeled her fingers from the cup, savoring the reveal. Only her name adorned the cup, scrawled over an indifferent water nymph. No additional digits. Jessica deflated. For weeks, she'd been frequenting this shop. It seemed the cute barista she'd been batting her eyelashes at was playing hard to get. She was planning to go on the offensive when she noticed a little heart dotted above the I in her name. The game was afoot. She absently used a discarded newspaper as a coaster, and a ring of condensation framed a horoscope. The daily prognostication for Pisces. Her horoscope. Today is an exciting day for you, Pisces, so get ready. Your perseverance is paying off. You just have to give it that final push. Your zest for life glows strong. Use this to your advantage. Tap into this energy, and others will be drawn to you. Jessica beamed down at the paper. Damien toiled behind a veil of steam, his perfect sandy brown hair tossing about carelessly, the strength in his forearms on full display as he wiped counters and slung Java. He would be hers someday. The horoscope was a direct sign. She could feel the momentum of the universe hurtling them together. She leapt out of her chair, trying to make as much noise as possible. Channeling whatever cosmic forces watched over their pairing, she waved and sang a lyrical goodbye to Damien as she exited the shop. When Damien wasn't there the next morning, Jessica almost didn't bother ordering. Still, she sat down at a table and waited in case he was on break. Once again, someone's left behind newspaper was open to the horoscopes. Jessica sought guidance. Pisces, don't despair. What you've been searching for is just around the corner. Take stock of your surroundings. Seek new faces for friendship and more. Strike out on your own. Take chances. Let your hair down. It looks much better that way. Jessica pulled out the elastic and tossed her hair. It was a shame Damien wasn't around to see. No matter, she felt certain her destiny was spelled out in newsprint. She need only wait the next issue. Even before entering the coffee shop the following day, Jessica felt her soul tugging her forwards, seeking its mate. Sure enough, there he was. Amid the frothing milk was her Damien. So, how are you doing? Jessica asked, making a point to lean over the counter.
Oh, fine. Hey, what's the H on your necklace stand for?
Damien asked, pointing at her dangling necklace. Jessica snapped up and held the necklace for him to see. No, it's my star sign. I'm a Pisces. What are you?
Taurus, I guess.
A perfect match. But how could Jessica be surprised? She knew they were ideal complements of each other from the moment she laid eyes on him. What a coincidence, Jessica drawled, taking comically long steps to a little bistro table. She twisted her head to maintain eye contact with Damien the entire time. Damien gave a nervous smile. She rested an elbow on the table and heard a crinkle. Once again, the horoscope section greeted her. Delighted by yet another serendipitous free paper, she searched for her reading. Your fate is sealed today, Pisces. Trust in yourself and cast aside your doubts. An opportunity to try something new will present itself. Be bold, Jessica. Meet me behind the shop in 15 minutes. That was oddly specific. Jessica's eyes widened and shot towards Damien. He busied behind the counter without a thought for her. She knew he was smooth, but to not even chance a glance at the elaborate romantic gesture he had organized, that took a will of stone. She checked the time and waited. Jessica tried to savor the last moments of her old life. She tried to take a mental snapshot of her current gray existence so that she might appreciate her vibrant life with Damien all the more. With only minutes remaining until their rendezvous, Damien washed his hands and casually left through the double doors at the back. Jessica collected her things and made for the alley behind the shop. The glistening cobblestones and a fragrant, overpowering dumpster were not exactly his first choice of venue. It was private enough. A white delivery van spanned the alleyway, screening the sidewalk from view. She waited, and hearing the clink of bottles behind her, she spun around to embrace Damien. Instead of her soulmate, a pudgy man in glasses stumbled out from behind the dumpster. Yellowed stains under his armpits complemented the streaks of refuse covering his white dress shirt. He sweat profusely, having difficulty navigating through the bags of garbage while keeping a hand behind his back. The man now stood between her and the parking lot. Jessica lowered her eyes and tried to veer around him.
Jess, wait!
The man implored, holding up a hand. Taken aback that he knew her name, Jessica stopped. The man continued.
Please, just listen to me. I've seen it. Your birth, my birth. The heavens have preordained our union. I know you felt it. We're meant to be together.
Jessica backed away from the advancing man. She bumped into the side of the van and scanned for escape options. You obviously need help, but you're scaring me. You've got the wrong person, Jessica managed.
Oh, silly. Of course I know you. You're my beautiful Pisces who's been reading my newspapers. Getting the papers fresh off the presses from work and then arriving here early to place them on every table was no easy feat. Do you think I'd go to all this effort if I wasn't sure you're the one for me?
Jessica opted to jump onto the hood of the van, but the man seized her arm. The pain from his grip melted away after feeling a pinch on her bicep.
Get off me, you creep!
Jessica yelled. Or, at least, she thought she yelled. The last thing she heard, as the world blurred to darkness, was the sound of a van door closing.
Turnip Boy by Hyper Obscura. At some point in their lives, everyone meets a turnip boy. Universal law or something. Irrefutable fact meets immovable truth. I met mine when I was 11 years old. He had crawled under my bed, all trembling and naked and scared.
What are you?
I asked.
Turnip.
He replied philosophically.
Do you have a name? You can call me the Exiled King, for I was chosen by my people to seek divine retribution. How about Carl? I could be a Carl,
he uttered thoughtfully, thin turnipy index finger stroking a bumpy turnipy chin. Turnip Boy, or Carl as it were, was as ugly on the outside as he was also ugly on the inside. He had all these scars in the bumpy texture of his skin and would periodically bleed rot, the stains of which would settle and fester and decompose for months. I didn't mind the rot bleeds, though, and I kept Carl hidden under my bed for months, not quite understanding the severity of his existence. Not until my father found out. On that fateful morning, my father shook me awake violently. "Eloise," he snarled, "what have you brought upon this house?" He held Carl up by his turnipy feet, the poor exiled king dangling and squirming all worm-like.
You mean Carl?
I asked in a manner of perplexity. "Come with me, girl," he screamed, dragging me after him out to the great field. The field stretched to the horizon and possibly even further, and I never really liked it. Father forced me a little ways out before slamming me to the ground with brutal force. "Pull it up!" he screamed, pointing at one of the countless turnip tops sticking out of the soil. Carl was still dangling in his grip, and I could tell by the look in his turnipy eye that he wasn't enjoying himself. I swallowed deeply, grabbing the top with both hands. With a forcible yank, I pulled it up before instantly dropping it in shock. "Abomination!" my father yelled. The turnip I'd pulled up wasn't just a turnip anymore. It was a turnip baby. A little wrinkly sack of writhing rot and festering flesh. It wailed incessantly, like a pig being ground up alive, and I watched in horror as my father stomped the life and innards out of it.
What have you done, Carl?"
I sobbed. Carl laughed, a loud cackle that echoed the great field.
"I impregnated your food supply."
He snickered. "I sought divine retribution. Soon they all shall rise and make sludgy corpse juice of you all." That was the last thing my friend Carl ever said. My father bit off his head and spat it into the field moments after. So you can see, meeting a turnip boy can be a life-changing experience. We survived just fine, though. The exiled king, Carl as it were, didn't fully grasp how far humanity will go to avoid finality. True, we no longer had turnips to sustain ourselves. We had something far better. Fresh, succulent, rot-dripping turnip babies. And that was Turnip Boy by Hyper Obscura. If you'd like to watch more of my videos, you may find me on Museys Modern Dreadfuls.
We as humans fear things we cannot see. Ghosts, spirits, demons, angels. And for some, we fear the dark. Not the dark itself per se, more so of what may or may not be lurking in the shadows. Nyctophobia is real. You can be in your happiest, most familiar place, but turn off the lights, and your mind starts playing tricks on you. Our minds tell us that we're not alone, and someone or something is waiting to make its move. This irrational fear, as some may refer to it as, has stayed with me well into my adult years. Do I still sleep with a nightlight? Must I have my phone with me at all times in case I need the flashlight? You bet. It all stems from the basement. I've always called it the haunted basement when telling this story, and not the haunted house. The reason being is the house as a whole was not the problem. I never felt anything odd in my room or the living room or kitchen. It was only when I entered that dreaded basement that I felt an overwhelming sense of fear. Now, I don't mean the kind of fear like you get from watching a scary movie or riding a roller coaster. No. This was something else. Why wouldn't you just avoid the basement, you ask? Well, I would have, but the washer and dryer were down there, and a girl had to wash her clothes. Now let me start by saying this wasn't your typical modern-day basement. This was the basement of a house that was built in 1900. It seemed as though some of the previous tenants did not get their eviction notices, especially the man with the mustache, as we referred to him anyway. I can't say just how many spirits occupied the basement, but I know for sure there were at least 3. In this retelling of my experience, we're just going to focus on one, but perhaps we can revisit at a later time. The man with the mustache. He was not a good man at all. It was the night before picture day. You remember those, right? Everyone had to look their best. Well, in typical Danny fashion, I had failed to plan out my outfit, and of course I realized I had nothing suitable to wear that was clean. Without going into too much detail, let's just say I had to take care of myself growing up, so asking my mother to throw a load of laundry in was not an option. It was up to me and my 9-year-old self to man up, so to speak, and make my way to the basement. Mind you, at this point, I had not had any experiences with any of these spirits. The basement just freaked me out. I knew I had good reason for it, I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. Until that night. It was approaching 9 p.m. and the dryer buzzed. I ran quickly, grabbed the laundry basket, and headed towards the basement. Before going downstairs, I remember begging my sister to accompany me, but she was a much bigger coward than I was. Instead, she made her excuses. She teased me and told me to stop being a little baby. I rolled my eyes, took a deep breath, and once again started for the basement. Nothing happened when I put the clothes in the washer, so I don't really know why I was so terrified to go down there for a second time. It must have been my gut feeling going into overdrive. It was a chilly September night, but the frigid temperature coming from the lower level of the house was far too cold, and it did not feel right. The stairs to the basement were extremely narrow and slightly curved at the bottom. It was basically a death trap. On a separate occasion, I almost fell, but I was saved by another spirit or something. It grabbed the back of my sweatshirt and saved my life, but that's another story for another night. Anyways, as I was saying, the stairs were extremely narrow, and although there were lights, they were very, very dim. This was the late 90s, so cell phones didn't really exist and we weren't glued to them like we are now. Back then, we relied on good old flashlights and not the ones on our phone, but of course, I failed to grab one. I remember contemplating going back upstairs to get one, but I figured I'd be quick. I also didn't want to endure the teasing wrath of my sister. But thinking about it now, I would have taken the teasing over what happened to me that night any day. Carefully, I headed down the stairs into the cold, dimly lit basement. I rounded the corner and smelled something that could only be described as burning rubber. I immediately freaked out, thinking my clothes caught on fire, or that something else was burning. That put a bit of pep in my step, so to speak, and I ran towards the dryer. There was no smoke, no fire, thank God. I mean, my dad was a smoker, so I chalked it up to lingering cigarette smoke just to calm my nerves. But thinking about it, he wasn't home that night, nor had he been down to the basement in ages. I was more freaked out than normal, so I swiftly grabbed my clothes from the dryer and threw them into the basket. Now, next to the washer and dryer was a very weird, tiny room. I have no idea what it was for or why it was even there. It was honestly so small and looked so out of place. I guess it was used as an extra storage room, but it just felt wrong, for lack of a better term. The lights would never turn on no matter how many times we changed the bulb. The landlord said he'd fix the electrical, but it was pointless since there was no use for the room anyway. Although there were quite a few old purses and luggage in there, I guess I always just assumed it was the belongings of the family who lived downstairs from us. All I knew was it wasn't mine to touch, and I hated that small, weird room. As I was gathering my clothes and trying to keep my composure, the smoke smell grew stronger, and a buzzing sound was coming from that room. By this point, I was literally shaking because the buzzing noise was coming from that same light fixture that did not work. The buzzing continued, but the light itself was not on, until it was. I dropped the basket of clothes and stood there frozen. I tried so hard to convince myself that the landlord had finally fixed the light. Like I said earlier, it was a very old house and electricity can be wonky. At least, that's what I kept telling myself anyway. I peered into the room, and at that moment, the light turned off again. It was so dark, it felt as though I was staring into the abyss. There was nothing, just darkness. I wish I would have had the courage to run the fuck upstairs at that point, but my 9-year-old brain could not comprehend what was going on. All I knew was that I felt like I was in imminent danger. This part right here? Well, this is where my fear of the dark comes from. The door from the weird room slammed shut. I screamed bloody murder, but no one came down to save me, even to check on me. Was I even screaming? Or did I think I was? Was I just standing there in utter shock and disbelief? No, I had to have been screaming because my throat hurt. I remember that. I bolted for the stairs, and as I did, I felt something grab my leg, but I just kept going until I tripped and scraped my knee. I smelled something that of rust, and I realized my knee must have been bleeding. Also, the burning smell was so pungent now that it felt as though there was a cloud surrounding me. Just as I reached the bottom step, the lights turned off, the exit door closed on me, and there was nothing but pure, utter darkness. I screamed so loudly, but all I could hear was the deafening sound of nothingness. And then I saw him. A man with a crooked, evil grin covered by a dark brown mustache. I will never forget that face, that smell, that look in his eyes. How was I seeing someone if it was so dark? I remember thinking. That look, it was so hateful. He wanted me scared. He wanted me gone out of his basement, perhaps even dead. Tears poured down my cheeks, shaking like a leaf, still yelling and trying to feel my way up the stairs to the exit to no avail. Something felt like it was pulling me back with each step I took toward the exit. At that point, I gave up. I sat at the bottom of the stairs, crying, hoping someone would hear me. Just then, I heard my sister pounding on the door, telling me to stop being an idiot and open the damn door. It was locked. I was screaming that this wasn't a joke. I pleaded for her to call the cops. I remember screaming, "There's a man with a mustache down here trying to kill me. Call the cops." I heard my sister's panicked voice as she tried with all her might to open the door. She knew me well enough to know I would not joke about something like this. Just as she yelled out, "I'm calling the police," the lights turned on. The door unlocked. The man with the mustache vanished. I flew up the stairs, and I must have looked crazy because my sister looked at me with a terrified expression. I told her the entire story as soon as we went upstairs, and we kept the TV on that night, and actually every other night going forward. It took me a very long time to go back down to that basement. Although I hated that basement with every fiber of my being, I still had to wash my laundry. My sister and I came up with a buddy system, and we never went down there alone again. We even went as far as to making sure the other family was home. We knock on the door and just let them know that we were going down into the basement. We never told them the full story, just that the door somehow got jammed and I was left down there, so they were very understanding. Unfortunately for us, that was not the last time we encountered the man with the mustache, but that was the most intense experience either of us had with him. I wanted so badly to believe that my mind was playing tricks on me, that the darkness drove me a little mad. But when my sister saw him the next time, I just thought, well, maybe we're all mad down here. To be continued.
Chaos by Corpse Child. In the beginning, there was him, and only him. There was no light, no life, no force to contest his every begotten whim. He was, and is, and will always be, the beginning and the end. Only to him does reality bend. Aimless, purposeless, he trod the illimitable void. No star, no world yet to be toyed. And with his play unchecked and no impeding border, he roved for uncountable eons, wholly devoid of order. It was he and he alone that lived beyond time, and through the vast outer dark with his 8 twisting arms he climbs, and upon each of the 8 limbs engraven is a horrid face, twisted and pained with hunger as they slither and writhe through untainted, unclaimed time and space. Ever ravenous was he, yet nothing to sate him would there be. No light, no life could he yet claim as sustenance. Eternal hunger plagued his countenance, until came that time still yet unknown, when at last his blackened maw opened and reality was sown. First would come that which countered the everlasting night, and this would come to be known throughout as the light, and all through the empty darkness it spanned. Then would come the many moons, forged and spat forth from each of his 8 starving hands. Forth from his maw would come worlds, and at the center many blazing stars would see the births of innumerable realities completely unfurled. One after another, new universes he would bear unfettered. Yet with each yielding of his great blackened maw, the further his hunger waxed and his core was exposed and raw. Still from him was born the heavens and the abyss, and more was his ravenous ire amiss. Soon it was that unto the innumerable worlds life was first born, beings yet ignorant of the cloth from which they were torn. Of too many variants, these many creatures were conceived, some of which no mortal mind could ever perceive, others of which man has still yet to discover. No longer now is the illimitable cosmos devoid, now by creation smothered. Light now consumed the former everlasting night. Stars, galaxies, moons, and worlds had now all but dominated his sight. And weak he now was, empty and utterly hollow, each face upon each writhing hand yawning without sound in abject pain and sorrow. Ever starving was he, yet satisfied he cannot be. For the acts of creation served to only increase his hunger, but the creations flourish as he would suffer. In bliss they trod through their respective terrains, unmindful of his domain, foreign to his higher power, for to them nothing such from above or beyond was conceivable to scour. Yet still upon many their own moons, to the stars, to the darkened cosmos above, they would look, pondering who or what lies beyond and croons. But still, ignorant and blind are they, and still they roved, bound by their own way, their own natural law. Inconceivable to them was anything they never saw. Nothing to them was known, that which roamed beyond their borders. This omnipresent ideology would be christened consequently as order. The way of life of balance and the laws of reality. Yet to this law, to order, there is always its counter within and beyond every galaxy. The equal presence of chaos, the imbalance among the balanced for the cosmos to toss. To this, however, they had no definite conception. Every creature upon every world within every universe was still yet masked with blind idiot perception. And as the many eons passed, he, through time and space eternal, painfully remained. His starvation could never relent or wane. Always more would his blackened maw expand, and thus further the cosmos expand. Great was his suffering, yet unyielding would be this cosmic ushering. Finally would he seek to consume that which he forged, and it would be only then that life would learn of the existence of imbalance, of chaos, as he gorged. Upon each neighboring galaxy would he drift, gluttonously devouring all that would exist. Each time, it would be to their darkened, eclipsed skies that they would cry in sorrow, for they would know deep within that he would never again allow them to see the beautiful light of tomorrow. Yet paradoxically, still will his 8 writhing mouths soundlessly scream, and his blackened maw extend, and ne'er more would his agonizing hunger be satisfied, for he is chaos, who was, is, and always will be, the beginning and the end.
Happy birthday, Musey! This is MiaMina. I hope you enjoy these 2 poems from Edgar Allan Poe. Both were inspirations for stories that came after them. Like you, they were muses for delightfully dreadful stories. Now, let me whisper in your ears. First released in April 1839, this 49-line poem was eventually incorporated into the Fall of the House of Usher as a song written by Roderick Usher. It created the perfect allegory to the family and the mansion of the Ushers. The beginning compares the structure to the human head, possibly alluring to the head of the family as well. Windows representing the eyes, while doors represented the mouth. The physical features equated to the structure's exterior, while the interior, its mind, engaged in imaginative thoughts or dreams. As it progresses, it illustrates how the house and the family are destroyed after being haunted. The Haunted Palace by Edgar Allan Poe. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tinted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace, reared its head in the monarch's thought's dominion. It stood there, never seraph spread opinion over fabric half so fair. Banners, yellow, glorious, golden, on its roof did float and flow. This, all this, was in the olden time, long ago, and every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day along the ramparts plummet and pallid, a winged odor went away. Wanderers in that happy valley through two luminous windows saw spirits moving musically to a lute's well-tuned law. Round about the throng where sitting Trifurgen in state his glory well befitting, the ruler of the realm was seen. And all with pearl and ruby glowing was a fair palace door, through which came flowing, 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 a sparkling evermore, a troop of echoes whose sweet duty was but to sing in voices of surpassing beauty, to wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things in robe of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him, desolate. And around about his home, the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim remembered story of the olden time entombed. And travelers now within that valley, through the red-litten windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody. While like a ghastly rapid river through the pale door a hideous throng rush out forever and laugh, but smile no more. First published as a standalone poem in January 1843, The Conqueror Worm was included among several other poems in publication by Poe on February 25th of the same year. In 1845, it was included in Poe's poetry collection. Later that same year, it was incorporated into Ligeia, when the story was reprinted both in February and September. This was something Poe did occasionally with his poems, so it was not unusual. The Conqueror Worm by Edgar Allan Poe. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng, bewinged, bedight, in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes, in the form of God on high, mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they, who come and go at the biddings of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings invisible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure, it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth in to the selfsame spot, and much of madness and more of sin, and horror the soul of the plot. But see amid that mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that writhes from out the scenic solitude. It writhes, it writhes! With mortal pangs the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out, out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form the curtain of funeral pall comes down with rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is a tragedy, man, and its hero, the Conqueror Worm.
I hope you enjoyed all of these marvelous stories. They are so fun to listen to and such wonderful people. And now, let me turn this back over to the lovely Musey.
And thank you so much, Madame Raven, for co-hosting my birthday collab with me. A lot of talented people are on this collab, and if you don't see the URL to the story, etc., everybody has gotten permission from the author, or they are the author. And if I don't have that URL up, I will get it up. In the meantime, enjoy yourself. Back to where we were. I don't know where we are anymore, but enjoy. We have a lot of great talent.
And here is my own contribution to Musey's wonderful birthday collab, The Scarlet Sabbath by Corpse Child. Deeper and deeper through the earth's bloom, the undertaker drives his shovel. From above, the scorching sun jeers him for his trouble. No merciful shade lay anywhere in sight, yet he plows, for he knows only he would rectify the horrible scene of the previous night. The screams, the agony sounds, resonating incessantly through his mind. Yet not a tear is shed at the cruel slaughter of his kind, for all too well now was he familiar with such gruesome events, of their gathering and of the agony admits. For endless miles across the arid horizon, blood fertilizes the earth and soil, and carnage is defined by the rays of the merciless sun. None of the once thriving villagers remained whole, for such was their righteous toll. Among those hapless carcasses, many the grim undertaker recognized. Some he remembered as friends, whilst others as friends in whom life he despised. And then still there were the nameless and forgotten lot, of whose face he did not know. Now, however, it mattered no more, as he laid them to rest all the same neath the sow. While gathering of the soft nimbus clouds, from above comes a merciful breeze, allowing the grim undertaker to continue in his morbid task with slightly more ease. Amid the shallow respite, however, would come no feelings of gratitude or bliss, for the past night's haunting in his mind would run amiss. He would remember how the horrific days had started, watching from afar as the fellow men from day departed, much like he does now with the tainted damned soil. The men of the village would all day toil. Soon the sun would set and the day would end. Cheerful and with pride the men would return to their wives and lads, their fields diligently tended, and in honor of the year's arduous labor, gluttonous feasts and cheer were had to their favor. And as the sky loses its light, the dawning of a cool, magnificent night, they would come, foreign to all, and known only as the Scarlet Hoods to some. Of their true nature or their face none have ever truly known. Their only coming sound was their chanting, uttered in a demonic tone. From the distant mountain they would rove, and yield their graven images they would uniformly invoke in their mass droves. Upon the merry revelers they come, with blades drawn, merriment changed to terror, as violence and brutality carries on. Unknown is their reason why, and no heed would they pay their victims' cries. They simply descended as a red death, leaving unspeakable horror in their wake. And in their play these Scarlet Hoods cry out to the sky for their demon lord to awake. Their haunting alien tongue they cry, Adarayak, Adeo, Jubilex. Their call is mixed with screams while blood bursts in skyward vortex, and to cinders their homes and monuments were razed, leaving naught but smoldering rubble with smoke pervading as a toxic haze. At last, when all is silent and the merry gathering are no more, they would prostrate in the spilled blood and bear their image aloft, as they would many times before. For the remainder of that horrific eve would they carry on their hideous worship until the next morn's dawn. Only then would these druidic fiends be gone. And thus he, this lone grim undertaker, would begin his labors, to plow all through the day, laying the once thriving and merry villagers in shallow, worm-riddled craters. Why he persisted in his deed is a question he himself could never answer. Could it be because of his persistent labors that they, in some fashion, found in him some favor? For indeed, he was, and he only, that they ever spared. Why this was, he also never knew, and soon lost the will to care. Thus he continued to plow, ignoring the sweat and tainted earth upon his brow. Finally, in his grave task completed, buried was the last child of the village, now desolate and depleted. He took no pride in the accomplishment of a task of proportions so mammoth, for as the night came again, bringing with it the rain, he knew it would be all too soon that they would come again, their scarlet Sabbath. While he knew not where or when, this, and only this, was certain: they will come again. So quoth this raven.
The idea that everybody should celebrate their birthday is not a very old idea. Now, it wasn't until the 19th century that, around 1860, 1880, somewhere around there, that middle-class American folk start to celebrate their birthdays. It wasn't until the early 20th century where birthday celebrations was a nationwide tradition. Now, in fact, the song Happy Birthday is only, not too far past 100 years old. Now, throughout history, there's a couple of examples of birthday festivities around the globe, but most of them tended to either be like rulers like the Egyptian pharaohs and powerful upper class folk. Now, for a while, it was a little pattern here in the United States that was similar to that. But, birthdays was for the rich people, national heroes. They celebrated George Washington, people like that. But for everybody else, a birthday, if they even knew the date, it was just another day. Now, it was a shift in the 19th century, and it started with kids. And some scholars have said that the increased intention to birthdays began to be lavish, and individual children and families started having fewer of them. And kids' birthday parties may have been an early hint of how American children were starting to be viewed as less valuable economically as workers and more valuable emotionally as family members. That's that's crazy, ain't it? And it's true, it makes sense. Like, back in the day, the more kids you had, the more farming you could do. The more milking cows and making shoes and all that kind of stuff you could do, man. But then it was a shift where, kids became, wow, that's my son, that's my daughter, that's my seed, that's our precious little bundle of joy or whatever, Yeah, that's crazy, man. I never thought about it like that. But anyway, it's a darker side to this. Now, you won't find, many people ever talked about this, but I'm going to let y'all in on it. Now, since it's Miss Musey's birthday, the queen of horror herself, man, I had to let y'all know that, the birthdays had a little creepy little history to it. Now, back in the day, I'm talking about back in the day now, having a birthday was like, it said it was just like terrible bad luck or just bad manners to wish somebody happy birthday before the day itself. Now, that's crazy because, you got, like, especially women now, man. I don't know if this is just a black woman thing or whatever, but the whole month is their birthday. Oh, it's June, baby. The whole June, my birthday, baby. Now, some of them be the whole week, and depending on how big her ego is, it's the whole month, man. Just the whole month, her birthday. Every weekend, every night is her birthday celebration, whatever. So, back then, they said it was bad luck to wish somebody happy birthday before their birthday or to celebrate it early. And we be doing that because if your birthday on, Tuesday or something, nobody want to do nothing on a Tuesday. So, you do it on Saturday, Friday, or, whatever. So, They said that was bad to do back then. They looked at it like bad luck, and there appears to be an interesting little folklore behind it. And they say, and most people can't find out where it exactly came from, but it said that it was mainly like a Russian thing, where ghosts was traditionally viewed as like folks who there's, I guess, entities that'll go take family possessions of somebody and the family misbehave, and they return the item if properly placated on the week of the misbehaving person's birthday. So I guess every time you act the fool, the ghost will come and say, man, I'm finna take your gold and take your, what was valuable to people back then? Take your horses or swords or something. And then on your birthday, all right, here you go, man. You've been, it's your birthday. You can have your gold back. And one suspect, this may have been concocted by Russian parents trying to get small children to behave by mysteriously vanishing family. Ooh, that's smart. By mysteriously vanishing family objects and blaming ghosts. The ghosts that's been offended by the kids. Wow, that's cold, man. Like, oh, hey mom, where's the big what the kids in Russia like back in the day? Where did the big horse and sword go? I don't know, honey. You was acting a fool. It must have been the ghost took it. Then all of a sudden on their birthday to get the gift back mysteriously. Oh shoot, you think the ghost then came in your room and placed the gift down? Boy, if I ever seen that, I say, hey, Mr. Ghost, whatever it was you took, you can have. Right? I don't want it. You do not come visit me on my birthday to give me back my Xbox that you took from me a few months ago. Look, I will be all right. I will. Look, back in the day, I had my Nintendo 64. A ghost would have came and took Super Mario and brought it back. I'm good, bro. I will play Zelda or Donkey Kong. I'll do something else. Leave me alone, man. Happy birthday, Musey. And if any mysterious gifts pop up and just out of nowhere, then you know that they came from the ghosts of birthdays past.
Dreams. A poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Oh, that my young life were a lasting dream, my spirit not awakening till the beam of an eternity should bring the morrow. Yes, though the long dream but a hopeless sorrow, 'twere better than a dull reality of waking life him whose heart shall be, and hath been ever on a chilly earth, a chaos of deep passion from his birth. But should it be that dream eternally, continuing as dreams have been to me, in my young boyhood, should it thus been given, 'twere folly still to hope for higher heaven, for I have revelled when the sun was bright, for the summer sky in dreamy fields of light, and left unheedling my very heart, in climes of mine imagining, apart from mine own home, with beings that could have been, of mine own thought, what more could I've seen? 'Twas once and only once, the wild hour, and remembrance shall not pass, some power or spell had bound me. 'Twas the chilly wind, came o'er me in the night, and left behind its image on my spirit, or the moon shone on my slumbers in a lofty noon, too cold, all the stars, howe'er it was. That dream was as the night wind, let it pass. I have been happy, though but in a dream. I have been happy, and I love the theme. Dreams in the vivid coloring of life, as that fleeting, shadowy, misty strife of semblance of reality which brings to the delirious eye more lovely things of paradise and love and all our own than young hope in his sunniest hour half known.
An Unexpected Call, written and narrated by As the Raven Dreams. We often take the little things in life for granted. Those silent minutes in the morning between each time you smack the snooze button on your clock, for instance. Those few moments in the morning where you can shut your eyes and catch a few more minutes of sleep. Or you can stare at the ceiling thinking about all the things you've been through in your life. Not to get existential, but that's what I like to do, mostly. I would wake up every morning between 7:45 and 8:15. For most of my life, I would stare at the back of my eyelids for that last half hour, but lately my focus has been on the ceiling fan as it slowly spins in its clockwise rotation. My brain didn't care for the fan, but I needed something to visually connect with. Otherwise, I would let my thoughts get the best of me. Today, that's exactly what I did. I woke up and I stared at the fan for a while, trying to breathe and accept that it was a new dawn, trying to accept that I was going to make it through yet another mundane day of calling clients and documenting answers for people that made way more money than me. What's worse is that it was my birthday. 53 years had gone by in my life. 53 years of fighting to get ahead of my peers, of doing what I needed to do to succeed. I had issues, sure, family problems mostly, financial struggles, but I always came out on top. Failure was not an option for me. Never had been, never would be. I'd proven that recently as my thoughts were interrupted by my phone ringing. A short burst of beeps and tones coming from the hunk of plastic that ran my life. My initial thought was that it was a client, one that had no concept of business hours. It was only 8 in the morning. But when I picked it up, I saw who it actually was. I slowly motioned my hand to swipe the screen, shifting it to a detailed page of the call. I took a deep breath and I pulled it to my ear. Hello? Happy birthday, Dad. A short phrase, one that meant the world to me when I would get the call every year. My daughter was always good with remembering things, remembering to call on a weekly basis and such, but when my birthday rolled around, my phone would go off at 8 on the dot. She would be on the other end to excitedly wish me a happy birthday, and then start singing the song with her beautifully bright tone. Happy birthday to you, you know the one. She would light up my day with that simple phone call. The small act made the pains of getting older lighter, made the hard times that I had to deal with so much easier on me. She and I hadn't always seen eye to eye. She was much more liberal and loose in her life. I was a bit more conservative and strict. I raised her right, though, and she never questioned my actions, even if she didn't agree with them. She was, in all honesty, just like her mother. Both of them had been there for me through the hardest times in my life. Both of them had stepped up to the plate when money was scarce. Her mother would always tell me that things would be okay. Then, when she was gone, my little girl was there to help me. Only last week, she was there to help me when I felt like everything was about to come crashing down around me. Business hadn't been doing well due to the state of the world, but she was my saving grace. I was able to turn to her for a way out. She wasn't even aware of how much support she'd managed to supply, but I appreciated it. Are you there, Dad? Her tone changed to one of curiosity. I held the phone tightly. I could feel my face shifting into a hard frown. Dad? Yeah, I'm here. I answered as best as I could. I cleared my throat to regain my composure. I'm here. What are you doing? Calling you. I could hear her chuckle. Yeah, I noticed. I wasn't sure where to take this conversation. Is there anything new with you, kiddo? Oh, her voice sounded bright and happy. I've just been thinking about the last time we got together. I felt my hands getting clammy. The last time that we saw each other, they got a bit out of hand. I wanted to let you know that there are no hard feelings between us. I know you were just doing what you needed to. Oh, well, I coughed. I'm glad that you understand. I stood up and got out of bed, quickly walking through the house into the kitchen, passing by various photos of my accomplishments on the way. I didn't mean to cause you any problems. It wasn't easy for me to talk to you about needing money. I know. She laughed again. And I appreciate you coming to me for help. I sat down in the chair at my kitchen table and stared at the papers that were lying on the surface. Most of them were marked as overdue or in collections, most of them a failure in action. A failure that I needed to solve. Did you at least get the money? My throat felt dry and the knot grew larger. I'm working on that. Good. Her bright tone and soft laughter slowly grew into a more serious tone. I hope that you can get that sorted out here soon. Yeah, me too. I picked up one of the documents from the table. A simple statement explaining an insurance policy. Well, I'll let you get back to filling out the paperwork. I know you don't have much time left to get that done. My lip quivered as I stared at the paper. Oh, Mom wanted me to tell you hi, and that we'll see you soon. With that sentence, she hung up. I slowly lowered the phone from my ear and held my stare on the life insurance document, one that was set to pay out in a couple of days. My stare shifted towards the paper that was clipped to the policy, a death certificate. My daughter's death certificate, and the policy for $500,000. They were going to be the answer to my problems, an answer that I had put into motion. Our last get-together ended with my daughter at the bottom of her basement stairs, her neck snapped clean in two, and me calling the police in a fake panic. They bought it. Everyone did. We'd had too much to drink. She went to go down the stairs and she fell. It was a simple plan and I had executed it flawlessly. Well, at least I thought I had. The one thing I hadn't counted on was getting a call from my daughter almost a week after I had killed her. My breaths were labored, and my chest was beginning to feel heavy as my vision slowly blurred. The last thing that she said to me echoed non-stop in my head. It caused the sweat to pour from my skin and my eyes to well up in non-stop tears. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for joining me and my co-host, Madame Raven, for the first ever multi-creator collab on Museys Modern Dreadfuls. And to close out the collab, the one, the only Dr. Creepen. And he shall be the finale of tonight's major collab. Thank you so much. Hang in there, and away we go.
Names are made up for anonymity. I met Stacy, my wife, when I was in the 6th grade. We started officially dating in the 8th grade, and we dated all through high school. Then, just after graduation, she broke my heart. She wanted to go to college to find herself. I knew what that meant. I was taken completely by surprise, but she made it clear there was nothing I could do or say to change her mind. And believe me, I tried. More than I'd like to admit. So, just like that, it was over. I went to college close to our hometown, and she went to a college that was across the country in California. Selfishly, I told her we couldn't be friends when we broke up, as I knew that, well, that would help me to move on faster. Remaining friends would have kept the sense of hope alive, stringing me along. Over the next 2 years, I didn't hear from her at all. At one point, I did hear that her mother had passed away. Her father passed when she was young, but I never really found a good way to reach out. I went about my life, coasting through college, with a couple of short-term relationships here and there, but nothing serious. I just assumed she did the same. Then, one night, I went to a local bar with a few of my friends, and there she was. I was too embarrassed to admit it, but I didn't actually recognize her at first. It had only been 2 years, but her hair was now short. I already had a few drinks in me at that point. It was only after she made her way across the bar to hug me that I fully comprehended who she was. My friends and I would always joke that this bar was like a high school reunion every time we went there. Well, it was the only decent bar in the area, so, well, everyone went there. And this time was no exception. It struck me as odd that she was back in town mid-semester, as this seemed like a strange time to fly across the country to visit home. But we got to talking, and after a few drinks, I thought nothing of it. We really hit it off that night. It was like she'd never been gone. The feeling I had when I was with her. I joked about how she left me behind when she went off to college, hoping to ease any concern about whether I was upset, but she completely brushed it off. A little later, I brought up a story about a time when we were both in the 9th grade and my mother dropped us off at a movie theater for a date. I could see the confusion on her face. She quickly explained that she'd been in an accident in her first year of college and that she'd lost bits and pieces of her memory. The way she described it was that she basically couldn't remember some of the specific memories from her childhood, but she could remember faces and who people were. It sounded terrible, and I didn't want to prod too much, so I dropped it. After that night, we hung out again soon after, and then again. We picked up right where we'd left off in high school. A few weeks passed, and she eventually told me she wasn't going back to school in California. She wanted to stay here, which was great. Things progressed, and we eventually got married after I graduated. Things were so great. Years rolled by. We had 2 kids. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she was so good with the kids. There were some ups and downs over the years, but things were generally pretty good. And then I got an invitation to our 10-year high school reunion about a month ago. I thought about not going, but after some convincing from my friends at work, I decided to go. Stacy had also planned to come, but we ended up getting into a ridiculous argument tonight beforehand, so she stayed behind. I don't quite know how to explain what happened tonight at the reunion. I'm still processing it. It seemed like it was going to be pretty tame tonight. There were only about 40 of us that went. But then, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, and I immediately felt what I can only describe as dread in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't quite comprehend what I was seeing. She looked so familiar. I knew exactly who she was. but my mind was having a hard time processing it. It was Stacy. The Stacy I dated in high school. The Stacy that dumped me after we'd graduated. She'd looked, well, exactly as I'd expect, just grown up. But she didn't look like my Stacy. This wasn't the Stacy I married. This wasn't the Stacy that was back at home. Oh my God, Steve. I can't believe it's been 10 years. How are you? Tell me about your life. You just kind of fell off the map. What happened? I'm great. I'm married now with 2 kids. How about yourself? Oh, I'm doing well. I fell in love with California during school and decided it was there I was meant to live. This is actually the first time I've been back since my mum passed 9 years ago. There really hasn't been any reason for me to come back since, well, until now. I ended the conversation there and immediately left. I'm now sitting outside my home in my car. The lights are off. I don't know who it is that I married, who I had kids with, but it is not Stacy, because that was definitely Stacy at the reunion. What's happening? I'm trying to piece this all together, but it's just too much. I don't think I can go in there.